she got him in the room, but that never maturated and whatever. But and then his office just refused to take my calls because I wanted to be honest. I'm working on a documentary, and he must have had some idea what was going on, or was either contacted by someone at the Pentagon. Look, we got a guy. He's going around. He's asking questions, and you might get a phone call. And I sat on this for like 3 or 4 months, and I didn't know what else to do. I showed Dr. Sala, and then I showed Donald Schmidt, who was J.L. Hynek assistant in Chicago, and he's the first person I showed it to. He's the Roswell expert, and he was flipping the pages in a restaurant in Wisconsin with his mouth open. And he basically said, if you've got this wrong, nothing changes. If you're right about this list, this changes everything. And then I called Richard Doty and I said, Mr. Doty, I finally got a hold of me. Very nice man to me, very personable. Hi, Richard. My name is John Stewart. Do you know anything about the Victor film? Yes, I do. I know some things about it. I'm like, wow. Okay. Deep breath. Was it real? Yes, it was real. I'm like, it real meaning it showed an actual off-planet extraterrestrial alien being. Yes. And I said, okay. Do you know who Victor is? He said, no. Uh, but there was a very disgruntled bunch of people down in S2 and in S4, the other facility. And these disgruntled employees, Victor being one of them, help remove the tape. And I will tell everyone here, Victor, who kind of said he removed the tape, didn't. It was simply taken out of the S2 facility by the Air Force cameraman, and 2 copies were made at the Area 51 Groom Lake Photo Lab. And the second copy, the 3-minute film, was smuggled out in a GSA burn bag. That's how it left. No, nothing's, there was no kind of like smuggling like a mule over the American border with drugs. And I mean, it was let out almost like a Ocean's 11. And Doty said that it was not filmed in S4. There are no alien housing there. The alien housing is in S2 Alpha. And I'm like, what's S2 Alpha? He sent me a satellite photo of it and said, that's what it is. It's called the Alien Retention Program. This being was brought in on a part of Project Pounce. Uh, Doty's like, I don't know the provenance of the being, but I think it was from the Kalahari crash where 2 beings were recovered. And he said, but the entire project has been moved to Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah, where they have now a huge super secret underground facility. S2, S3, S4 are still in kind of a caretaker status. But the alien program, whether that be the retention, the interrogation, the biological reverse engineering of craft, that all is now taking place at Michael's Airfield, at the Dugway Proving Grounds. And I find an email on the internet from 1999 of the project manager. His name was Major Thomas Mack, beloved. It says Richard Doty was our counterintelligence agent for Project Majestic, and that was the name of this project. Here's the bombshell. The name of the project for this whole thing since 1947 was the Majestic program. And the program to interview the beings in S2 was called Project Aquarius, which was basically all things about aliens in contact with human beings. And that is from the email, and that is also from Richard Doty's mouth, who is verified as the counterintelligence agent, who is in his 70s and wants to tell the story, the truth of what's going on and what the government is covering up.
I wanted to ask you about the New York Times piece of this. So you brought this to the New York Times. You brought this to Leslie Kean. You brought this to Ralph Blumenthal, who, of course, write for the New York Times and publish reports in the New York Times. Famously, their big bombshell report a number of years ago about the USS Nimitz. And you brought this to them. What happened when you brought this to the New York Times?
For asking me that because I was kind of sworn to secrecy by them until the stories came out, and they are out. And I contacted Ralph Blumenthal. I said, I have to do this in person. I have to show you my investigation. And I flew to Midtown Manhattan. We met at the Hilton in Midtown, August of last year, and we sat there for 5, 6 hours. I debriefed them basically. They were kind of astonished that I was old school journalism, getting out of my car, knocking on doors, putting notes on people's cars, and and uh, we had lunch, and they said, "Look, we totally believe you. Your investigation is thorough, it's vetted, it's sourced, but there's no way the New York Times is going to run this story. I mean, you've got a film and a photo of an actual extraterrestrial." And Ralph and Leslie both said, if we could get, or you could get a credentialed inside military intelligence official to come forward, which I'm like, that's never going to happen. To my shock, it did. We could possibly take this to the New York Times and run this story. If you had somebody come forward saying that film's real and the whole alien retention interview program is real. David Grush, the story breaks on News Nation. I mean, my family, my wife were like, they're like, "John, you're going to be in the New York Times. This is what Leslie and Ralph have been telling you. This is what you needed. You have it now." And I don't know what's going on.
But you've heard nothing from
it's
them. And to be clear, they're not staff writers of the